There are moments, brief, almost imperceptible, when time seems to ripple, when a scent, a shadow, or a stranger's glance tugs at something unnameable inside you. A strange familiarity, a flicker of déjà vu so sharp it cuts across the surface of your reality like lightning across still water. In those moments, a silent question forms, not in words, but in essence. What else is happening, just beyond my reach? What if these flashes are not glitches in your perception, but invitations to remember that your existence is far vaster than it appears? That you are not just living one life, on one timeline, in one body, but multiple lives, simultaneously layered and deeply entangled. This is not fantasy. It is not escapism or the fodder of science fiction. It is a quiet truth whispered through ancient traditions, quantum speculation, and the deep corridors of consciousness itself. You are more than the sum of your memories. Beneath the story you call your life is a multidimensional self, a fractal expression of an infinite source, experiencing reality through countless lenses at once. One version of you may be walking through this exact moment. Another may be facing a decision you made differently. Yet another may never have been born at all, but exists in a frequency of pure potential. To glimpse this is to unsettle the rigid definitions of self. It is to realize that the I you speak of is not a single, solid monolith, but a harmonic chord, resonating across time, space, and dimensions. These parallel streams are not distant fictions. They are entangled echoes, always humming beneath your awareness. Sometimes they bleed through, a sudden inspiration, a dream that feels like a memory, an inexplicable pull toward a path you've never walked but somehow know. The rational mind may discard such things, brushing them off like dust from the shoulders of logic. But the soul knows. It remembers the truth like a seed remembers the tree. In the sacred architecture of existence, time is not a straight line. It curves and loops, folds upon itself, weaving patterns that the linear mind cannot follow. Imagine a great tapestry, but not one woven horizontally, one that spirals inward and outward infinitely. You are not a thread in that tapestry. You are the weaver and the loom and the countless patterns emerging all at once. The self you recognize is merely the lens, the aperture through which consciousness is observing one sliver of its own unfolding. And yet, even this one sliver is haunted by glimpses of the others. You may have felt it when standing at a crossroads, knowing the outcome of both choices as if you've already lived them, or when meeting someone for the first time and feeling an ancient familiarity, or perhaps in dreams so lucid they feel more real than waking life, where you inhabit bodies that are yours but not yours, in places that seem familiar yet nowhere in the waking world. These are not mere psychological fragments. They are reflections from other realities in which you are also alive, each version informing the others, each learning, failing, loving, forgetting, and remembering in its own rhythm. Science has begun to catch up to this ancient knowing. Quantum mechanics teases us with the idea of entangled particles, of infinite possibilities collapsing into reality only when observed. What if your consciousness is doing the same, selecting, filtering, translating infinite yous into the particular melody you're hearing now? What if your intuition is not just inner wisdom, but the faint signal of another self, sending messages across the veil. A veil, not of distance, but of perception. To see it, to truly watch carefully, as the title urges, is to begin walking between worlds without ever leaving your body. It is to reframe every decision, every synchronicity, every emotion as not just yours, but as part of a much greater dance. A constellation of selves all orbiting the same central light. And in this, there is both great awe and great responsibility. For what you choose, what you feel, what you awaken to, reverberates across dimensions. You are not just dreaming this life. You are participating in a living library of experiences, each one shaping the whole. So this is not merely a philosophical inquiry. It is a reorientation, a gentle, radical shift in how you see yourself, your past, your purpose. The journey ahead will unfold the frameworks that support this idea, reveal symbolic narratives that whisper this truth, and offer practical ways to live as someone who is already far more than one. To truly understand the notion that you are already living multiple lives at once is to venture beyond the thresholds of ordinary time and identity. It is to peer into the subtle latticework of consciousness, where every possibility exists not as fiction, but as living truth. The idea is neither speculative fantasy nor philosophical indulgence. It is a profound lens through which to view the human experience as something layered, refracted, and interconnected. This is not about reincarnation as a sequence of lives stretching linearly across centuries. It is about simultaneous unfoldings, a holographic self branching into myriad expressions, all echoing the same source code of you, each one vibrating in its own unique octave. At the heart of this concept lies the principle of non-linear time. Linear time is the illusion that consciousness wears like a costume in this particular reality. It gives structure, allows for story, sequence, memory. But beyond the surface, at the level of quantum behavior, at the depth of deep meditation, in the swirling narratives of dreams, time does not move forward. It expands, like a spiral galaxy. It curls inward and outward, with every point connected to every other point. This means your choices, your insights, your emotions do not only ripple into the future, they ripple outward to other selves, other timelines, other frequencies of the same being observing reality through a different lens. This leads to the second guiding pillar, parallel identity. You are not the only you living in this moment. There are versions of you that chose differently, loved differently, failed, succeeded, never left home, never said yes, never said no. These are not hypothetical constructs. They are conscious currents in the field of the infinite now. You are, in essence, a focal point, a conscious anchor in a vast ocean of versions. You are the observer on one ship among many, but the ocean is shared, and sometimes the winds of one boat stir the sails of another. From this awareness emerges a subtle phenomenon, cross-perception. Sometimes, without warning, you sense something that feels out of place in your current timeline. A sudden burst of emotion that doesn't belong to the moment. A memory you don't quite remember living. A dream that carries the weight of experience. These moments may be bleed-throughs, brief collisions between timelines, where another version of you brushes against your awareness. In these flashes, the veil thins, and something sacred flickers into view: the multi-layered self, a soul speaking in simultaneous tongues. In ancient mystical traditions, particularly within certain branches of Kabbalistic and Gnostic thought, this concept was understood not just philosophically, but spiritually. The soul was seen not as a single flame, but as a radiant prism, casting light into different worlds, each world with its own reflection of the same divine spark. The physical realm, the astral realm, the dream world, the realm of thought. Each one is a dimension in which consciousness explores itself, creating layers upon layers of life, learning, and expression. In this view, your higher self is not somewhere up there, but is the sum of all your expressions across all layers of time and form. Modern physics, in its strange, poetic way, mirrors this ancient wisdom. The theory of the multiverse posits that for every decision, every event, a new universe branches off. Every possibility exists. In quantum mechanics, particles exist in a state of probability until observed. Perhaps our choices are what collapse probabilities into experience, but perhaps also those other probabilities do not vanish. They manifest in versions of reality where your consciousness is also present. Fragmented, yes, but not separate. Think of yourself not as a single point in time, but as a wave, stretching across a field of potentials, interacting with itself in a dance too vast for the waking mind to trace. And what of identity, then? If you are living multiple lives at once, what defines you? The body, the memories, the preferences? These, too, are costumes, ever shifting. Identity becomes less of a fixed definition and more of a frequency, a signature vibration that colors each version of you, no matter how different the story. It is not your job to grasp all these versions. It is enough to realize that they are there and that they matter, that their wisdom might flow through your intuition, that their heartbreak might echo in your healing, that your courage, right now, may liberate a version of you who is still trapped in fear. So when you feel a sudden pull toward an unfamiliar path, when you meet someone who seems to recognize a part of you you've never shown, when you awaken with tears in your eyes from a dream that left no images behind, pay attention. These are not random occurrences. They are evidence, not scientific proof as the world defines it, but soul-level proof. They are fragments of a tapestry that, once acknowledged, begins to weave itself consciously through your life. And so, the foundational truth unfolds. You are not a linear being. You are a multidimensional soul experiencing itself through infinite points of awareness. Every version of you is learning something vital, and those lessons are not isolated. They ripple, they transmit, they accumulate in the great reservoir of your expanded self. When you begin to live from this awareness, your perception changes, your compassion deepens, your intuition sharpens. You become aware of a silent council of yous, whispering from across the veil, guiding you toward choices that serve not just this life, but the harmony of the whole. To understand the nature of simultaneous lifelines is to enter the domain of myth, where language bends and stories become the architecture of truth. The rational mind, limited by its craving for clarity and sequence, can only reach so far. But symbolism, fluid, ancient, deeply intuitive, allows the soul to speak directly, bypassing the mind's gatekeepers. Here, in this realm of archetypes and metaphors, the idea that you are living multiple lives at once is not foreign or futuristic. It is sacred, familiar, told again and again through the stories we keep revisiting, as if to remind ourselves that we've known this all along. Take the tale of Indra's net, a luminous teaching from Vedic cosmology. It describes an infinite web stretching across the cosmos, with a jewel placed at each intersection. Every jewel reflects every other jewel in the net, an eternal hall of mirrors, endlessly interconnected. You are one of those jewels, sparkling with your own story, yet reflecting and containing the entirety. Each version of you is another gem in this web, another node of consciousness catching and refracting light. No jewel is separate. A movement in one sends ripples through all. This is not just a poetic image. It is a perfect metaphor for how our parallel selves may be functioning across dimensions, distinct, yet intrinsically connected. In dreams, too, this truth leaks through the cracks. Consider the dream in which you are both yourself and someone else, where you know you are you, but your body is different, the place is different, and yet the emotions run just as deep, just as real. You wake up and say, "That wasn't me, but it was." Such dreams are not mere mental byproducts. They are transmissions, windows into parallel iterations of you, living their own trajectories. In the liminal state between sleep and waking, where identity softens and time loses its grip, the veils grow thin enough for messages to pass between worlds. And what of mirrors? In mythology, mirrors are often portals. The tale of Narcissus is often misunderstood as one of vanity, but in its essence, it speaks to the seduction and danger of falling too far into one version of self. A mirror does not only reflect, it refracts, distorts, reveals what is hidden. In some stories, mirrors don't show you, but show another you, from another world. To gaze into a mirror is to meet an echo, sometimes a warning, sometimes a calling. And, in your waking life, mirrors appear in more subtle forms. A person who triggers an unfamiliar part of you, a place you've never been that feels like home, a decision you almost didn't make that lingers like a ghost. These, too, are reflections of lives running parallel. The ancient Egyptians believed that the soul was made of many parts, not a singular essence, but a composite of aspects. The Ka was the vital essence, the energetic double. The Ba was the personality that could move between worlds. The Ak was the immortal form that united the higher and lower selves. In this cosmology, your existence was already multifaceted. Life after death wasn't the beginning of multiplicity. It was a continuation of it. Modern interpretations see this not just as ritual mythology, but as encoded wisdom, an early blueprint of multidimensional awareness. Then, there are the twin flame stories, so often misunderstood as romantic metaphors. At their root, these are narratives of soul division, two expressions of one consciousness split across dimensions, magnetized toward reunion. Whether or not you believe in literal twin flames, the symbolism reveals something important. The idea that your soul can fragment, can express itself in polarities, and that these fragments carry an eternal yearning to rejoin, to recognize one another across the shifting sands of time and space. In shamanic traditions across cultures, from the Amazon to Siberia, there are accounts of soul journeys in which the shaman travels to meet other versions of themselves. These aren't hallucinations. They are guided visits to other timelines. There is often a sacred animal that appears in both lifetimes, a symbol of continuity. There is often a wound shared across two lives, a sign that healing in one will ripple into the other. These stories aren't taught as parables. They are lived as direct experiences. Even children sometimes speak of these things before they are trained to forget. A child might say, "I used to be someone else," or "I remember a life where I was older than you," or "In the other world, the sky is green." Such musings are often dismissed as imagination. But what if imagination is the residue of truth? What if it is through these fluid, unfiltered perceptions that the soul is reminding us, you are not only who you think you are also who you forgot to be. And so we find ourselves standing at the edge of narrative, of language, of logic. These symbolic stories aren't meant to be dissected, but absorbed. They are archaeological clues in the ruins of your memory, echoes of your own voice, scattered across timelines, calling to you in dreams, in myths, in whispers from the mirror. You are not separate from these stories. You are the one who dreamed them into being. The message is clear. If you listen, you are already living multiple lives at once, not as some futuristic scenario, but as your present truth. These lives intersect through emotion, through intuition, through the hidden geometry of your soul. To ignore them is to live with blinders, but to acknowledge them is to awaken to the full cathedral of your being, where every stained glass window tells another version of your story, illuminated from within. When the veil lifts and you begin to see yourself not as a solitary self navigating a linear world, but as a constellation of lives unfolding in tandem, something subtle but powerful begins to shift. The air around your choices thickens with meaning. The moments you once passed over without thought begin to glow with sacred weight. Life becomes a kind of lucid dream, one in which you are still grounded in this present body, but aware, profoundly aware, that every breath is braided with echoes from other versions of you, other timelines, other choices that continue to breathe alongside you. And so, we must ask, how does this realization translate into the texture of daily life? What does it mean to live as if this were true, not as dogma, but as experiment, as invitation? First, it reframes your inner landscape. Those strange intuitions, those inexplicable yearnings that seem to come from nowhere. What if they are the emotional signatures of other selves? Perhaps the feeling of being drawn to a place you've never visited, or the melancholy that arises when hearing a language you've never learned, is not a fluke, but a whisper from a version of you that has been there. Listening to these whispers becomes a sacred act. Instead of dismissing them, you start to treat them like sacred clues, messages from your multidimensional family, your parallel selves offering wisdom through the subtle language of sensation. This also brings deep compassion to the choices you've made. When you understand that other versions of you have chosen other paths and are still alive within their own spirals of time, it becomes easier to forgive the self you are now. You no longer see your mistakes as absolute. You begin to feel the kindness of knowing that this version of you is only one story among many, and that its worth is not diminished by imperfection. Every path is being walked Every lesson is being learned. What matters is not control, but presence. Not regret, but resonance. Relationships take on a new tone as well. Perhaps that sudden connection with a stranger is the residue of another life. One where you were family, lovers, enemies, teachers. The intensity of a bond cannot always be explained by the chronology of this life. When you see another, not just as a body or a name, but as a facet of the larger mosaic you belong to, your interactions soften, judgment fades. You begin to sense the larger choreography behind every meeting, every separation. It becomes less about what someone did to you and more about what energy they carry into your life and what message or mirror they may offer from beyond the obvious. And then there's your path, your so-called destiny. This awareness changes how you pursue goals. Instead of chasing a rigid vision, you begin to feel into the version of yourself who has already walked it. You tune your actions not by logic alone, but by frequency. If you wish to embody a future where you are aligned, free, fulfilled, then you can begin to act as if you are already in resonance with that version of you. This is not imagination. This is quantum alignment. Each decision, each posture of thought or emotion becomes a tuning fork. Your life hums with the tone you hold, and by matching that tone, you synchronize with timelines where that version of you is fully expressed. In this view, healing becomes multidimensional as well. You may find yourself confronting an emotion or trauma that feels outsized, too ancient, too embedded for your current life to explain. Perhaps it is. Perhaps it belongs to another version of you, one whose pain is echoing through the lattice of time, asking for release. And by healing it here, you offer liberation there. You become a node of transformation, not just for yourself, but for the entire network of selves that you are unconsciously tethered to. This is soul work, and it does not always announce itself with fanfare. It is often quiet, felt in the stillness after tears, or the deep peace after a realization that didn't come from your mind, but from some other space entirely. Art and creativity, too, become bridges between lives. Have you ever had the sense that a song, a piece of writing, a dance came through you rather than from you? Perhaps it did. Perhaps your creative flow is a transmission, an echo of something another version of you is living, dreaming, knowing. To create becomes not just a personal act, but a multidimensional exchange. It is you sending signals across timelines, encoding insight in symbol, gesture, sound. Even your fears may no longer feel like prisons. When you recognize that a fear might not be born of this life, but of a timeline where that fear was realized, you no longer have to fight it. You can hold it gently. You can thank it for its message and then choose to embody a different frequency. This is how timeline healing begins, not with dramatic rituals, but with small acts of presence, patience, and pattern recognition. Living from this awareness is not about escaping this life. It is about being more fully in it. You walk the earth with an expanded heart, a clearer eye. You begin to feel your life not as a single melody, but as part of a symphony, one in which you are both instrument and composer, both audience and performer. And when the dissonance comes, you no longer panic. You know another measure is unfolding. Another version of you is holding a different note. And in time, all of it will resolve. We've walked a spiral path through time, selfhood, and the delicate threads that connect lives beyond the linear. And now, standing at the edge of all this remembrance, the truth lingers, not as theory, not as belief, but as presence. It pulses softly beneath your skin, gently reshaping the architecture of how you see and feel your world. You are not just living a life. You are living life in plural, symphonic form. Each note of your being harmonizes with an infinite echo. Each moment you embody reverberates through realities, both visible and veiled. This realization doesn't ask you to renounce this life. Quite the opposite. It beckons you to honor this life more deeply, with reverence and curiosity, knowing it is a single flame in a lantern of stars. You begin to see your thoughts as part of a chorus, your dreams as echoes from parallel scripts. The person you are here, now, is not the end result of your becoming, but the central witness, grounded, embodied, luminous, among countless expressions of the same essential light. And from this place of recognition, transformation begins not through effort, but through alignment. You do not need to grasp all versions of you. You need only listen. Life will whisper. The ache in your chest, the dream that won't fade, the pull towards something you've never known but already love. These are the callings of your other selves, reminding you that you are not lost. You are not broken. You are vast, and you are remembered. The more you attune to this multiplicity, the more life rearranges itself in your favor, not because of luck, but because you're no longer broadcasting from one frequency alone. You're becoming whole across dimensions. You are tuning into your highest orchestration, collapsing time not to escape it, but to infuse it with deeper meaning. That is the great secret. When you live as if all your lives are connected, they begin to cohere. They begin to support you. You start noticing synchronicities that defy logic. You heal wounds that were never fully yours. You unlock paths that feel both new and ancient, as though your footsteps were always meant to find them. And in your most grounded moments, in the simplicity of a breath, a meal, a conversation, you begin to notice a shift. The world feels richer, not because it has changed, but because your perception has expanded. You carry a knowing now, woven into the way you move, speak, and see. You are walking through this timeline with the quiet awareness that your soul is not confined to the name you go by, nor the story you've lived so far. You are the living bridge between infinite possibilities, here to experience not just survival or success, but resonance, coherence, expansion, and presence. This is the call, and it is timeless. Live as if you already are what you're becoming. Embody the vibration of the future you sense. Make choices that honor not just your comfort, but your consciousness. Trust that what feels aligned is not merely preference, but guidance from the deeper geometry of your soul. You are proof of your own vastness. You are already living multiple lives at once. Watch carefully. Live fully. Remember infinitely.